America's economic growth. Our folks back to work and grow our economy, quicker economic growth, and more sturdy and sustainable economic growth. Growth is balanced and sustainable. We need to create a self-sustaining cycle where people are spending and companies are hiring and our economy is growing.
The economy is getting stronger.
Jobs accelerate even more job growth.
The health of our economy depends on it. Getting this economy growing faster, creating more jobs. We've got to rebuild this economy. Jobs.
Sustainable growth, balanced growth
to boost the potential for growth, long-term prosperity.
Everyone in that letter, including you, calls for a path to growth.
Sustainability is used in different ways, but the important concept is the ability of people to maintain their well-being across generations, to enjoy life and what it offers. Sustainability is a matter of intergenerational equity, ensuring that the current generation, that's us, doesn't use so much of the Earth's resources that future generations are denied well-being or life itself. Human behavior is central to achieving sustainability, specifically in terms of our material and non-material consumption. The key concept is throughput, the total natural resources that are input into the economic system and flow out as foods, manufactured products, along with waste products too. In a steady state economy, throughput is held at a fixed level that can be maintained across generations. So for example, energy inputs stay the same year over year, and any economic growth is due to improvements in efficiency rather than greater use of resources. Well, in any economy, a throughput refers to the total mass of physical stuff that's produced by, let's say, mining, drilling, manufacturing, farming, fishing, and so forth. And these things represent inputs to the economic system that go through the system and come out as finished goods we consume, as well as the waste products from the inputs. So in a steady state economy, throughput is held constant at a rate that can be maintained over long periods of time, providing for sustainability for intergenerational equity. The question of how to set a stable throughput rate is very good, but it's difficult to say how throughput rates could be held constant, because for 300 years, we've only known a growth economy in which throughput increases decade over decade. Engineering a change to a steady state economy would likely require a combination of things like tax policy and incentives, but it may require some kind of catastrophic event to induce people to wake up and realize that the planet can't sustain perpetual economic growth. Another optimistic possibility is that increasing prices for fossil fuels will slow economic activity and bring about a no-growth economy that can act as a sort of stepping stone to a steady-state economy. But a no-growth economy differs from a steady-state economy. You can have a no-growth economy that isn't sustainable because the throughput levels are too high. For example, during the current economic downturn in the US, fossil fuel emissions declined, but not anything close to a level at which CO2 content of the atmosphere would begin to stabilize. A no-growth economy may nonetheless be helpful as a transition economy because it gets you closer to a steady state economy at least. It's all about developing reinforces, which is traditionally discussed in terms of values. In Western culture, we've come to believe that individuals acting in their own interests naturally works to the advantage of everyone. But what's happened is that this narrow economic interpretation of this principle has prevailed, and we've come to think that everyone chasing material goods and wealth is the best system. But this merely ends up maximizing consumption. If, on the other hand, we were to create a pro-social culture in which we value other people, including those in future generations, this would be really desirable. When we do this, our behavior is less reinforced by material goods and more so by the well-being of others. The media can play an important role in this, but it's currently not. It's simply sustaining the existing culture. Most of the world's economic system, of course, is based on a free market ideology, and it's been successful in giving people incentives to work for the basic necessities they need and to provide those necessities in adequate quantities. But the free market system is also good at giving people incentives to work to provide them with things that would be considered luxuries in any century up until the 20th century. Things like private cars, jet plane travel, large homes. The free market system also suffers because it perpetuates itself beyond the point where the economic system is sustainable. For example, for everything we purchase, corporate sellers plow back part of the money they earn to advertising, which should be broadly regarded as a form of psychological conditioning to train people to buy more. And it works. The free market thinking has turned our schools into training grounds where people learn only things that contribute to the growth economy, not to enjoy what life has to offer for free. Immediate short-term pleasures like looking, touching, hearing, smelling, and tasting good things make human life worth living in many respects. When coupled with skill acquisition, our susceptibility to short-term reinforcers allow us to enjoy art, music, reading for pleasure, conversation, games of skill, and so forth. The disadvantages of being susceptible to short-term reinforcers are outweighed to a large extent by our capacity to acquire language, our verbal behavior, which has the effect of bridging the gap between our current behavior and long-term consequences. But you have to have a culture in which teaching people to bridge the gap between short-term and long-term consequences occurs. In some respects, short-term reinforcers aren't the problem. The problem is which short-term reinforcers are powerful. In the long run, education to teach consumption skills is an important solution. Allowing people to develop short-term reinforcers that they can enjoy, but require some skills to obtain. At the policy level, there's a neglect of long-term consequences that will affect future generations of people. About the best we can do is what environmental organizations are doing, which is call attention to the problem. This sometimes is effective, but more public support is needed. Collective self-control isn't only about reducing excessive material consumption, it's also about arranging a culture where non-material reinforcers are created and maintained. For example, suppose there's a collective recognition that drawing is a creative and interesting use of free time that people can enjoy without consuming resources. Drawing education then becomes an important part of the school curriculum. Children can become talented drawers, giving them a source of pleasure that can remain with them for the rest of their lives. A source of reinforcement that can successfully compete with the relative influence of resource-intensive reinforcers. So we have to understand that a key to sustainability is creating reinforcers that are not resource-intensive, such as drawing, painting, other activities in the visual, performing, and literary arts, in open source computing, and so forth. It's likely we won't be able to make a successful transition to a sustainable economic system until we experience some kind of failure that people attribute to the old economic model.